So good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us here today. I'm Carolina Alberna, CEO of the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce based in Toronto, and I'll be your MC today. I would like to welcome everyone to the first Canada-Brazil Pipeline Forum organized in partnership with the Consulate General of Canada in Rio de Janeiro and Pipeline Brazil. So first, for those who are not familiar with the BCCC, we are a membership-based association that supports its members through information, networking, and advocacy. And for nearly 50 years, we've been building relationships between Brazil and Canada, strengthening the bilateral relationship in investment, trade, best practices, and mutual growth and prosperity. Our relationships are private and public, featuring managing directors and decision makers from companies and institutions of all sizes. And our volunteer board of directors has expertise, knowledge, and connections that can only be found by active players in the Brazil-Canada market. So if you're interested in learning more how the BCC can support your company, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'll add my email in the chat. So just the format of the event today was developed to foster matchmaking and business opportunities. We have here with us representatives of 5 Brazilian pipeline operators and distributors, as well as 6 Canadian companies, providers of service and technology. As per the agenda, we'll give the Brazilian operators a minute to introduce themselves, and after the presentation from Pipeline Brazil, each of the 6 Canadian companies will have approximately 7 minutes for their pitches, where they will be introducing their companies and the services they offer. After the presentation, Marcelino Guedes, the CEO and founder of Pipeline Brazil, will moderate a Q&A session. All questions should be included on the Q&A box located in the bottom of your screen. We have allowed attendees to upvote and answer questions to incentivize a positive discussion, so feel free to add your comments and questions throughout the presentations. During the Q&A session, we'll also allow participants to ask questions directly to the speakers to encourage networking. So please be ready. If you have any questions, we will ask you to open your camera and your mic so you can do the questions yourselves. Without further ado, I would like to invite Nadine Lopes, Trade Commissioner for Oil and Gas at the Consulate General of Rio de Janeiro, to say a few words during the welcome remarks. Thank you, Nadine. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi guys, thank you, Carolina. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. So hello everybody. For those who don't know me, but I think you do, I've been sending you messages over and over in the last few days. I'm Nadine Lopes, based in Rio with Global Affairs Canada. I'm based at the Consulate General of Canada here in Rio. I look after the oil and gas sector, and I must say it is a great pleasure for me to be here today with all of you from the Brazilian and the Canadian side. First of all, I would like to thank our partners and co-organizers, Marcelino Guedes from Pipeline Brazil and Carolina, yourself from the BCCC. It's a pleasure to work with you guys one more time. So I would just like to say again that it is a pleasure for us in Canada to be able to put together this event, to bring together and promote potential meetings with Brazilian and Canadian companies in the pipeline segment, which is an area that is a high priority for us in Canada, just because Canada really stands out in the pipeline segment. And we have been working hard over the past, I would say, decades, trying to promote business development between Brazil and Canada. So I'm not going to say much more because Marcelino is going to make a great presentation about what's going on in Brazil in terms of opportunities, in terms of the new regulatory framework. But I would just like to say that it's a great opportunity to have you guys here. I hope you guys from the Brazilian side, the Brazilian companies, the Brazilian operators, that you will find all the Canadian companies presenting interesting. They are all cutting edge solution technologies companies. So anyway, thank you again. Carolina, I think this is it for the time being. Shall I invite the representatives of the operating companies to speak very briefly?
Yes, please do so.
Sure. So I would like to invite Mrs. Ingrid Telvi from, Lindsay from Comgas. Ingrid, are you there with us?
Hey, Nadine, I'm here.
Hi, thank you. Hello, go ahead.
Thank you for the invitation. I hope you guys are all well. My name is Ingrid. I'm representing Comgas here. I'm in charge of the engineering program here at Comgas. Going through a little bit of our big numbers, so you guys know a little bit about our company. Right now, Comgás is the largest natural gas distributor here in Brazil. We have a little bit over 2 million clients today that we attend on 94 counties in São Paulo area. Right now we have a little bit over 18,000 kilometers of natural gas distribution pipelines. And we distribute around 15,000 million cubic meters of natural gas every day. So that's a little bit about our numbers. We are part of the Cosan Group. It's a big investor group here in Brazil. And we are looking for big investments and growth on the future. So thank you again.
Thank you, Ingrid. And now I would like to invite Mr. Lauro Campos, Maintenance and Operation Manager at NTS. Lauro, the stage is yours. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, and great to have this conversation. Well, NTS is responsible for the gas transmission from São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and Minas Gerais. Okay, our assets, the most important ones, are the a little more than 2 kilometers of pipelines, and I think the most important thing that happened these days that we finished the internalization of our operation on 28th of July. Okay? And before this date, the operation was done by Transpetros. It was very well done by Transpetros, but for strategic reasons, it just decided to take over the operations. So from now on, we are conducting our operation and maintenance. So all these subjects will be directly concerned directly with us, the maintenance and operation that we're doing at this moment directly. Okay.
Thank you, Lauro. And now over to Marcelo Saavedra, Director of Operations and Maintenance at TBG. Marcelo, please, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I will try to show here just a brief overview about TBG. TBG is a pipeline that comes from Bolivia until the south of Brazil, near Porto Alegre. The total extension of the pipeline is about 2,600 kilometers. Let me show you here. Okay, here the map of Brazil. The pipeline comes from Corumbá, enters Brazil, and goes to the state of São Paulo, and then to the south of Brazil. We have diameters ranging from 32 inches to 16 inches. The maximum operating pressure is around 100 bar. We have 15 compressor stations, 47 seat gates, and 4 interconnections with other pipelines. The first one here in the border of Brazil and Bolivia, that we connect with GTB and receive gas from Bolivia. We connect here in center of São Paulo, in Paulínia, with NTS that Lauro has already mentioned before, and also in Guararema that we send gas to the São Paulo area and to NTS. And in the south, we also connect to TSB, the other pipeline operator there, and the distribution company Sulgás. Our nominal transmission capacity is around 30 million cubic meters per day. About our market area, we connect to 7 distribution companies. We serve 50% of Brazilian GDP, around 2 million residential consumers, 20,000 commercial consumers. We connect also to 3 refineries and 4 fired power plants, gas-fired power plants. That's a brief overview of our company. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcelo. And now I would like to invite Eric Courtalon, Director of Operations at TAG. Eric.
Say good afternoon.
Welcome.
It works, yes. So good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for this invitation. So my name is Eric Courtalon. I have been the Chief Operating Officer of TAG for a little less than a year. So just in a nutshell, TAG shareholders are Engie and CDPQ, la Caisse des dépôts et placements du Québec. And so TAG operates 4,500 kilometers of gas transmission network, so with 11 compressor stations. It's our specificities. We have approximately 1,000 kilometers in Amazonia with 2 compressor stations, and the other part of the network is around along the northeast coast from Brazil until north of Rio. And the main challenge that we are facing right now is next year we will internalize as NTS the remote operation, so that will be performed internally by TAG. And we have also a lot of project of innovation, transformation of our process and activities on the field to improve our performance. So just to conclude, thank you for allowing this exchange, because for us it's very important in a context on one end of the gas development in Brazil, and on the other hand of technological revolution that allow us to live a period of exciting transformation. So thanks again, and I'm sure that we will have some exciting exchanges also, discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. And now, last but not least, I would like to invite Mr. Ildemar Nunes, Executive Manager of Engineering at Transpetro Petrobras. Hello, Ildemar. Now the show is yours.
Hello.
Welcome. Hi.
Good afternoon for all. I'm here representing Transpetro, Petrobras Transport Company. Let me put on a map here to show how. Can you see the map?
Yes, we can see it well.
Yes, I'm in charge of the integrity and technology at Transpetro. We operate about 12,000 kilometers of oil and gas pipelines. And besides the pipelines, we operate also marine and ground terminals, okay? Here we have a list of our installations all around Brazil, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ildemar. Now, Carolina, over to you. I believe you're going to invite Marcelino to make his presentation. Is that right?
Yes. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ingrid, Lauro, Marcelo, Eric, and Ildemar for your quick overview of the companies. I would like to invite Marcelino Guedes, founder and CEO at Pipeline Brazil, who will now present an overview of the Brazilian pipeline sector. So Marcelino, stage is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Nadine. It's a special pleasure to be here today. Okay. Good afternoon for everyone. Just a second, just to share my presentation. Okay. All right. And then my name is Marcelino. I am Director of Pipeline Brazil. Okay. Good afternoon for everyone. On behalf of the Brazilian pipeline community, I'd like to thank you, all of you, to be for being here today. Okay, I'm talking about the Canadian companies and the Brazilian pipeline operators. My presentation today is divided into 3 parts: to talk about my present company, Pipeline Brazil, to talk a little bit about the relationship between Brazilians and Canadians, and to update all of you about the Brazilian pipeline market, okay? After almost 34 years working at Petrobras, I have retired and founded Pipeline Brazil. Pipeline Brazil is a different company because it is an associated platform. It's a company working with young professionals and old heads. We have been developing activities, developing studies, trying to identify new technology in the pipeline industry, training, events, and helping startups. Pipeline Brazil is ready to cooperate with international companies with invest in Brazil, or maybe to try to identify local partners to work together with international companies in Brazil. The relationship, I mean, the friendship between Brazilians and Canadians did not start yesterday. Truly not. We can see in this slide a timeline of this friendship, I think this relationship. In 1994, Petrobras contracted IPL to train and to qualify pipeline control room operators. IPL is the former name of Enbridge. In 1998, the Canadians, our friends from Canada, invited us to take part in an event. Is the name of the International Pipeline Conference in Calgary. And only 3 Brazilian engineers took part in this event. And I was there. It was an amazing event for us. In 1999, IBP, the Brazilian Petroleum Institute, decided to establish, to organize an international event on pipeline. I mean, the Rio Pipeline Conference. It is like an informal partnership with ASME and the people from Canada. In 2004, Enbridge was hired to revise all operational procedures used by Transpetro. As you know, Transpetro is a Petrobras company responsible for operating all assets of the midstream segment in Brazil. In 2005, believe it or not, almost then 200 Brazilians attended the International Pipeline Conference in Calgary. Okay, 200 people from Brazil in Canada taking part in technical events. And then from 1997 to 2021, several events, interactions, seminars, meetings, okay, putting together Brazilians and Canadians talking about pipelines, okay, just to have to have an idea about this relationship between International Pipeline Conference and the Rio Pipeline Conference. We decided to establish 2 awards: Rio Pipeline Award and the Calgary Pipeline Award. The best paper presented in Rio received the Calgary Pipeline Award, and the best paper presented in Calgary receives the Rio Pipeline Award. Okay, just to have an idea about this friendly relationship, this special partnership between Canadians and Brazilians. In the following slides, we'd like to show you some slides about these events, okay, with Brazilians and Canadians. It was in 2000 in Calgary. It was our first participation in the exhibition in Calgary during IPC, okay? This one was in 2004, okay, the Petrobras Pavilion in the exhibition in Calgary during the IPC. It was in 2006, okay? Now the Brazilian Pavilion is a different dimension, okay? And Petrobras was one of the sponsors of this technical event in Calgary, okay? It was in 2006 when Petrobras was the winner of the Global Pipeline Award, Okay, it was an amazing moment for our community. Here is in the Rio Pipeline Conference in 2007 in Rio. We can see the Canadian Pavilion in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, at the same event. And there's another initiative to try to convince people from Canada to invest in Brazil or to look at Brazil and to just to say that is a good market to invest and to work together with Brazilian companies. It is a simple slide just to show my friend Alan Murray and Mike Young from Calgary. We took this photo at the Hyatt Hotel in Calgary. Okay, now I'd like to share with all of you some information about the Brazilian pipeline markets. The oil and gas pipelines in Brazil are linked with the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and not to the Department of Transportation, like the DOT United States. Until 1997, Petrobras had the monopoly of all pipelines in Brazil. All these pipelines were owned, operated, and maintained by Petrobras. In 1998, Petrobras established Transpetro. Okay, as you are already aware, Transpetro is a 100 Petrobras company responsible for operating all midstream segments in Brazil. And because of federal law, Petrobras was forced to establish a company to separate the activities from the production to the downstream segment. And now just one company to be responsible for operating these assets. I mean, the midstream infrastructures. At Petrobras, when you talk about pipelines, there are two very important groups inside the company. When you talk about the gathering lines, production lines, I'm talking about the offshore pipelines, flexibles or rigids, or flow lines or risers. We have to talk with people, we have to talk with experts from Petrobras exploration and the production department. But when we have to talk with people from onshore business, onshore pipeline, onshore transmission pipelines, we have to talk with people from Transpetro. But in 2015, Petrobras decided to start to sell all natural gas pipelines. And considering the official information, accordingly, the Petrobras position, by the end of this year, all gas pipelines, I mean, Petrobras will be out of the natural gas business, and then all gas pipeline will be sold. Okay, in this case, we are talking about NTS, TAG, and the TBG as well. The pipeline business in Brazil has been passing through a real revolution. Okay, we can talk about the three segments of the oil and gas business. I'm talking about the midstream segment, yes, downstream segment, yes, and the upstream segment, the same dimension of a change. Okay, why? Mainly because of the Petrobras privatization process. Just to have an idea about the dimension of this movement, Petrobras is planning to sell 8 of its 13 refineries, including pipelines, land farms, and terminals. Okay, the Brazilian government has also been developing several movements, several activities to encourage more investment in the local natural gas market. Okay, such as new regulations, privatization of natural gas infrastructures, offering financial incentives, okay, for increasing the natural gas consumption, and several other activities. At the same time, Petrobras has established a major professional retirement incentive program, and many former employees have already retired, and some of them are now working in the private sector. Some others decided to establish their own company, like me. Okay, pipeline construction, new procedures, new technologies, pipeline risk management in high consequent areas, control room management, intelligent pipelines, sensor engineering, how to manage right of way in high consequent areas. It's a few examples, some examples of our demands when you talk about pipeline demands or technical demands in the Brazilian market. There is a very strong pipeline community in Brazil. ready to establish partnerships with Canadian companies. I have no doubt that's the right moment to look at Brazil. Therefore, come to Brazil and make the most of these opportunities. Why? Very simple. Because we have also amazing donuts here in Brazil. Okay? And keep in mind, the name of these donuts is Sonho de Padaria. Keep in mind, Sonho de Padaria. It's a special donuts in Brazil. And another reason is because Brazilians love coffee like Canadians. Okay? Thanks, merci, and obrigado. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marcelino. And the interesting thing is that the Brazilian donut, sonho means dream, right? So
yeah, but it's keep
is.
in mind, sonho de padaria is different, okay? It's a different donuts in Brazil.
I have to say, Brazilian food is amazing.
Okay.
Thank you, Marcelino, for this amazing overview. So the next part of the event now, we're going to start with the pitch sessions with Canadian companies. So again, I'd just like to remind everyone, if you have any questions, please add to the Q&A box, and we'll make sure that, or do our best to answer all the questions during the session. If we cannot answer all the questions during the Q&A session, we will send the answers afterwards, and we'll also be able to connect whatever wants to connect with the other companies. We can provide this matchmaking service after the event as well. So without further ado, I would like to invite, let's start with Seafair Technology. So I would like to invite Chance Wright, pipeline integrity researcher at Seafair, to do a quick presentation on the company. Chance, stage is yours.
All right, thank you for the introduction and good afternoon, everyone. Give me one moment here to pull up the screen, and if I can get a quick confirmation when that's visible.
Yes, visible.
Perfect. All right. So again, my name is Chance Wright. I'm a researcher here at Seafair Technologies in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And today, I specifically wanted to touch on our capabilities in reliability-based assessment of SCC, as well as the impact of hydrogen on legacy pipelines. And despite that lengthy title, I will try my best to get through all of this in about 5 minutes. So we'll start with a quick introduction into Seafair. We are actually a non-for-profit subsidiary of the provincial government here in Alberta, but we operate independently with over 35 years of performing applied research and development work in partnership with the energy industry. And a large portion of this work has to do with our abilities to simulate field conditions in one of our 2 purpose-built laboratories here in Canada. At these facilities, we are able to put full-scale specimens to the test, including flow through full-scale tests. We can load pipelines and other structures into our massive load frames in order to exert forces on them that push them well beyond the point of failure. We can examine how the different components necessary for oil and gas systems will withstand the harsh conditions that they will have to endure, including those that have a high temperature requirements or those that have poisonous or sour gas environments to work in. And finally, we can subject entire systems to external pressure in order to see how they would behave in conditions like those thousands of feet below the ocean. Besides performing testing and related consulting work, Seafair also offers a number of different software packages. In this case, the most relevant would be the Pyramid Risk-Based Integrity Management software for pipelines. So if you haven't heard of this software, this is a piece of software that uses the latest verified probabilistic models to predict the likelihood and consequences of pipeline failure for a comprehensive suite of pipeline threats. This allows operators to perform a number of different functions. It includes segment ranking to see which pipelines and which threats are affecting an entire network risk estimate. You can drill down to see how your risk changes over time, including the effect of maintenance actions such as defect repairs or hydro tests. And you can look to see how individuals that are near the pipeline will be affected by the failures of the pipeline. And you can get a detailed look at the influencing factors into your pipeline risk by plotting a risk profile, which shows the levels of risk along the pipeline route. to touch on a few of our key consulting areas related to pipelines, the first of which is defect assessment. So again, here, CIFR specializes in performing fully probabilistic assessments of defect safety. These type of assessments can include all of the different uncertainties that normally go into the defect assessment process. So we're looking at uncertain length, uncertain depth, and performing simulations to determine the true probability of failure for each individual feature. And what this allows is for very reliable and detailed probability of failure or remaining life calculations, which allows you to optimize the inspection or the time period required before a repair is necessary. And all this information is used to help lead operators towards risk-based mitigation programs. So this type of program allows for consistent life safety, financial, and environmental risk along pipelines, as well as between different pipelines in a network, all while optimizing the number of interventions and the cost required to perform them. Another important area of our consulting services is that of inline inspection tool reliability. So CIFR will work with operators and vendors or both at times to evaluate how well these tools perform in different conditions. We are able to perform independent sizing analyses to determine how well the tool predicted the size of defect parameters for different defect categories. We can look at which parameters influence that tool's ability to detect the defect and produce rate of detection so operators can understand which defects their inspections might be missing. And finally, for those inline inspection tools which give crack profiles, we can determine how accurate the burst pressure is when calculating using that profile if you compare it to that using a detailed profile from an in-ditch measurement. Lastly, I do want to touch on CIFR's leadership in managing the transition to a hydrogen economy. We've already done some consulting work to identify the gaps required to transition to hydrogen on paper, and we're also ramping up our abilities and our testing programs to suit this area as well. This includes looking at how legacy material will perform in hydrogen-rich environments, or at least with a component of hydrogen. We're also looking to perform full pipe body burst capacity tests in hydrogen environments, as well as examining the full set of infrastructure that is required to have hydrogen-based energy production and consumption. And that includes storage wells for both hydrogen as well as CO2. And we can look at how well the casings will hold up under the conditions that they will endure if put into service for this purpose. So that is the whirlwind tour of some of the important things that CIFR is working on these days. I would like to thank you for the invitation to this, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A session afterwards.
Thank you, Chance, for the presentation. So next, I would like to invite Mones Riscala, President at Via Plus Visitless Integrity Assessment, for his presentation. Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon, folks. Not quite sure if you want me to bring the presentation from my side or what I sent you earlier.
You can share yourself if you think it's easier, or we can try to share it from here, whatever you prefer.
Maybe could you bring it up, please? Thank you so very much for the invitation. It's an interesting opportunity to give a quick overview. Via Plus started the word visitless, trying to do things kind of remotely. So we have a kind of rich background in terms of satellite monitoring and a variety of other kind of technologies. But with that angle and with the background from TransCanada and consulting since then, we have focused on external hazards. For the purpose of the discussion, we're going to be talking mainly about geohazards. So external hazards are encroachment management and geohazard management. Just very briefly to elaborate on encroachment management, we've been working fairly actively in the North American market with respect to mechanical damage and so on to produce essentially these heat maps based on various remote sensing technologies in terms of where activities of encroachment are. By adding to the toolbox of technologies, we have also started to contribute a bit in activist activities, etc., and through to exploring possibilities of identifying potential kind of product theft of illegal tapping. Just mention that for completeness, but really we'll be focusing on geohazard management. And the geohazard management that we would be talking about essentially is looking at various geotechnical hazards, trying to undertake a risk-based assessment, trying to evaluate the susceptibility, which is basically the effect on the pipeline capacity, pre-mitigation, post-mitigation, and what mitigations would it take to achieve that delta. So geohazard assessment involves identifying basically the various threats due to a combination of various geohazards. They could, several geohazards could be acting in one place, leading to various loads and deformations on the pipeline. Geohazard assessment can be used to directly manage these risks and to put them in as an input, for example, to Pyramid, which was described earlier, or various other kind of overall risk assessment frameworks, and to work in the spirit of various codes. CSA Canada's code is one that works well with that. What's important here is to differentiate this and to take this beyond strictly geotechnical, geomorphological assessments. So inherent in a pipeline geohazard assessment is the capacity, the vulnerability, the resistance. And so we are looking at things, as we say, from the pipeline out, but it is really about what are the expected effects on the element at risk. And we tend to mainly focus the element of risk being the pipeline. So we're considering things like load, deformation. What would this particular geohazard lead to in terms of bending, in terms of torsion, in terms of kind of mechanical effects on the pipeline? And we undertake a system-wide screening used to identify the locations where further detailed site-specific assessments may be required. So we bring data, may it be spatial data, pipeline operational data, etc., and topographic mapping, geological mapping, the wealth of monitoring data that a pipeline company operator may have had, integrate all these to identify what is at play where, and in some cases, what distinct geohazard mechanisms together are working. I'm not quite sure who's driving here. You may be driving. So the output ends up being an example like that. You know, we could look at landslides, debris flow, rock falls, faults, and liquefaction if it's an area that is prone to seismic. Definitely flooding and vertical scour and lateral scour, the areas associated with rivers. We divide those, and what you will see at various bars, for example, you will see a light color and a dark color. The light color indicates where the hazard mechanism is at play. So for example, you look at landslides, the locations here suggest there is a slope there of such and such a width, of such and such a location that is unstable. However, that instability in itself does not necessarily manifest into equal impacts on the pipeline. And the impacts on the pipeline, therefore the susceptibility on the pipeline, is what's identified in the darker colors for the respective hazards. So it's obviously necessary, but not sufficient, to simply map the geological hazards, the geotechnical hazards, the hydrotechnical hazards, the seismic hazards, etc. Rather, we need to identify these and identify the effect on the pipelines. And then where they are possibly overlapping, we need to integrate all those together and come up with a pre-mitigation susceptibility, basically the third row from the bottom. And then we decide, well, what are we going to do there in terms of mitigation? We could be doing this decision, we could be doing this evaluation during the design stage or during operations. So we could increase the wall thickness, we can increase the depth of cover, we can introduce different stabilizations, we could change the pipe grade, etc. Ultimately, we move from a pre-mitigation susceptibility to a post-mitigation susceptibility. That ends up being kind of the failure probability that gets integrated with consequences in a framework, either like Pyramid or someone else. And we keep track of, so what are all the mitigations that we've done? Again, that could be applied at the juncture of designing a new project or during operations. Going down to the next slide, so what is the advantage of doing this? I am personally a geotechnical engineer. There's a lot of geotechnical engineers, and geotechnical engineering is a discipline that needs a fair bit of qualified professional or expert judgment. That's true, but I think there is the advantage of this, and why leading operators have embraced this is because it introduces a systematization that basically begins to address the heightened expectations by regulators, both internal and external stakeholders. Internal stakeholders would like to get into a bit more of a controlled, predictive kind of timeline assessment. So we could predict when can we be planning to do things to ensure not being met with negative consequences, financial consequences, environmental consequences, etc., due to a loss of containment event. This is becoming now a best management practice. It is spelled out in several codes. In fairness, all the codes, may they be American, Canadian, European, etc., they will not specify how to do it. They don't specify whether it needs to be quantitative, semi-quantitative, qualitative, etc. But there is an expectation to introduce some discipline and systematic approach to this. This, of course, will demonstrate a due diligence, and it will allow kind of an analysis of the pipeline's performance over time. How much are we spending to maintain a sustained level of integrity, etc. Moving to the next slide. So it basically begins with data. And basically, it is how do we collect route characterization data, pipeline data, various environmental drivers, frankly, operational data, pressure, etc. And from that, we integrate that. We go drill boreholes if need be. We use geological models if need be. But all that feeds into either a geohazard assessment, the green box to the left, during, you could do that during or design or during operations. Or if you're doing this during design, it has been very useful to support the estimate of geotechnical quantities and footprint. So how much, basically it supports construction execution. And so from there, it could be design, or from geohazard assessment, it could be integrity management planning. I realize this is going perhaps a little too quickly, but it just shows how the same exercise, beginning with data and applying a disciplined approach, could either support the integrity management of operating pipelines and or the design of new facilities. As a final reference, this ASME book has been published in 2019. It's been my honor to be invited to edit it. This is the second edition. Basically, it covers a lot of the kind of, pardon the pun, the terrain here. As mentioned, data generation, integration, management, and visualization is a big deal here. And then it could either go to geotechnical engineering and pipeline construction interface for new facilities, or geohazard assessment and management for operating pipelines, through to monitoring and mitigation. I thank you. If we can go to the last slide, and we'll look forward to any elaboration. Again, pretty rushed tour, and would look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much for the presentations. And again, if you have any questions for Mones afterwards, please add to the Q&A. We can connect you to him afterwards. Next, I'd like to invite Brody White, Sales Director at Ghgsat, for his presentation as well. So Brody, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'll just pull up my screen here and we can get started. Okay, well, thank you everyone for your time today. Thanks to the organizers for setting this up. I'll give you a quick rundown of Ghgsat today and try and keep us on track for the 5 minutes we've been allotted. So thanks again, and I look forward to questions. But diving right into it, what does Ghgsat do today? Well, what we do is we measure methane emissions. And we do this using our own analytics satellite and aircraft, and we do this across a variety of industrial sectors. So Ghgsat had its start in large part with funding from the oil and gas sector, but we've since expanded to look at other industrial sectors. Kind of nice though to be sort of back in the wheelhouse of our original funding today and talking a little more about oil and gas. But I bring this up just to point out that we, are very interested in working with operators across all industries to help manage methane emissions for them. So what do we provide? Well, we provide essentially data services. We have, like I said, analytics, our own analytics that we've derived, satellites that we own and operate, as well as our own aircraft that are well suited to monitoring large assets such as transmission pipelines and that sort of thing. We also do have a publicly available map that I'm showing here, but this is just intended as a brief outline of what I'm going to talk about here quickly today, starting in with the analytics. But I'd encourage you to check out pulse.ghgsat.com just to see some of the data that we have made public. That's a little teaser for some of our analytics capabilities. So what do those look like? What I've got on screen right now for you is a map showing the Americas. And you can see that we've segmented the world into a variety of zones, as we call them. And what we do is we provide analytics at a high level of these zones, looking at methane concentrations, trending the methane concentrations in those areas. We do this with a variety of data sources, but largely based on public data. We also offer analytics in the form of what we call a global survey. So looking for very large emissions, again, using public data sources. And we provide these as a subscription service. We have interest and contracts with all walks of those interested in methane and methane emissions. And the example that's shown here, actually, you can see some greens and oranges there. That's actually a screenshot of our higher resolution methane analytics that we provide. So we provide this on a roughly 2-kilometer scale, and it's updated weekly. The global survey similarly is provided on a frequent basis, again, acting as a bit of a catch-all for large emissions that we see routinely around the world. So complementary to the analytics offering, as our name implies, being Ghgsat, we own and operate our own satellites. Our satellites are designed to be relatively small and easy to launch. And like I said earlier, they're focused exclusively on methane. The key unique capability that we have that maybe some of the other satellite sources do not provide is we have the resolution that allows for the detection of emissions at the facility level. So when we talk about facilities, we're talking about compressor stations, valving, that type of thing along the system. The contracts we are operating on today, typically we're looking at sort of these, let's call them surface pieces of infrastructure rather than the linear pipeline itself. And what we do is we capture an image that's roughly 12 by 12 kilometers in terms of the field of view. And with the 2 satellites we have in operation today, we're able to revisit up to weekly. But we have already started on and are contracted for the launch of our next 3 satellites later in mid-2022, I should say. And then early in 2023, we'll be launching another 5 with a goal of being able to provide daily coverage of any of the assets that we might be monitoring for our customers. A quick example of what does a Ghgsat data product look like. Here, what you see actually is an observation that we've taken, clearly identifying a source of an emission at the center of that plume. We refer to this as our concentration map. And again, you can see that 30-meter spatial resolution that is unique to Ghgsat today. So we're the only operator of a satellite with this kind of spatial resolution for methane globally, and we're expanding our fleet rapidly. Happy to answer any questions about how this works a little later on, but the basic premise is spectroscopy. And I'll just point out that indeed the measurement is in parts per billion, but it is averaged over the entire atmosphere above each pixel, which is why the sensitivity needs to be so high. In addition to our satellites and sticking with the idea of sort of different tiers or layers of monitoring that we can provide, we also have an aircraft-based sensor. And the example that you're seeing on the right, that's actually one of the emissions we've uncovered as part of some aerial surveys we've done. Interesting to point out perhaps that it's not always directly on the sites that we see these things. One of some of the key advantages that the aircraft brings over the satellite is the aircraft is definitely well suited to linear assets, as well as covering sort of the larger pieces of infrastructure along the way, such as compressor stations or the like. We can cover around 750 kilometers a day with our aircraft, and we offer that with sub-meter pixel resolution and a detection threshold in the low tens of kilograms per hour. We're already working today with over 50 operators to provide services in a variety of capacities in oil and gas. And so I'll just leave you with a quick slide showing some of the clients that we have and some that we would certainly like to bring on board who are on the call today. But you know, the idea here is really that this is available today, and we're really excited about the deployment we've had so far and looking forward to hopefully engaging with a few of you more going forward. So thanks for the time, and back over to you.
Thank you very much, Brody, for your presentation. So next, I'd like to invite Robert Donovan, VP of R&D at Ghgsat, for his presentation.
Hello, I'm going to give a little canned presentation that I cooked up yesterday to try and squeeze our presentation into the 5-minute window. Normally it takes about an hour, hour and a half to present our product in its rather complete form. And so I'm going to just run a little video of 5 minutes of a fire hose of what our product can do, which this actually only scratches the surface. Welcome to Ghgsat's 5-minute presentation. Before we get started, I'd like to talk about the philosophy that drives Rogue Intuition. Early on, we discovered 5 things all industrial ML systems must have. The era of high-risk machine learning projects is over. Repeatable, simple installs and configurations are a must. Operator engagement is critical. Without built-in gamification-based engagement strategies, the best product will gather dust. Finances and safety demand machine learning systems be built to mission-critical standards, specifically distributed or cloud-based. Operators already suffer from information overload. Machine learning should make their jobs easier, not harder. Show me the money. Machine learning optimization systems need to measurably prove themselves across the entire infrastructure. Now back to the product. Machine learning for amazing industrial optimization. Rogue Intuition has many optimization modules, including power reduction, throughput, predictive maintenance, operator performance, and cost optimization. Optimize power usage while meeting all constraints such as throughput and pressure. Optimize throughput while meeting all constraints such as pressure. So we'll log into Rogue Intuition so that we can see how the machine learning is able to predict the future. Here we have a model of the system that it's able to make predictions given certain set points. Now normally it would do the exploration of the set points, but we'll do this manually and we'll see what kind of optimization we can get. Now normally it would just simply give us a set point, and there we go, 10% increase in flow, which would be pretty valuable. Rogue Intuition operates like thousands of full-time operators watching for when instrumentation isn't making sense. This is beyond simple SCADA high-low alarms like the graph below. Rogue is able to, as in the graph below, detect a value fluctuating wildly but within any normal alarm limits. Catching potentially serious problems missed by a typical SCADA system can help prevent unexpected shutdowns, failures, or other serious costly issues. Rogue Intuition is a game changer with the power to analyze thousands of instruments and present actionable information to operators and managers in a simplified format. Rogue 7 has experience building modules for failures in a wide variety of sensors and devices, including ultrasonic flow meters. Simple is a critical part of our design philosophy. We provide simple, actionable suggestions to make junior operators more like senior operators and senior operators even better. System-wide cost optimization involves taking into consideration many factors such as DRA, pressure constraints, power prices, financial, weather, etc., so that demand predictions, logistics, and scheduling can be optimized. When optimizing, Rogue can include interesting concepts such as asset wear, market considerations, and other factors that impact the bottom line of the entire organization. You can demand our product delivers an ongoing business case showing solid ROI. How we meet the 5 musts of a machine learning optimization system. This is an actual install of a pre-configured system. Our system is happy on Windows, Linux, and it being the 21st century, the cloud. Our employees have decades of experience building and installing systems such as SCADA, which is why we made our system drag and drop simple. Drag and drop simple includes our machine learning modules configuration. What you're seeing is the configuration of very advanced machine learning modules through very simple drag and drop. This builds, trains, and deploys the modules. We understand the regulatory, corporate, and server room needs of oil and gas customers. We have built our system to meet these needs. This is the final output of our gamification system. It allows operators and managers to clearly see operator performance. Operators might otherwise ignore the suggestions from our system. Our system will calculate comparison between what was done versus what could have been done. Our system can be distributed across multiple on-premises servers, and if one goes down, the others will redistribute the load with zero intervention, or we can put it on the cloud. Security is another key aspect of building mission-critical systems. Our system follows the best and most modern security practices possible. One HMI goal is to drastically reduce information overload of both operators and managers. We present simple, actionable suggestions as clearly as is possible. Our subscription model means we prove every month the ROI you expect from Rogue Intuition. What sets Rogue Intuition apart is that it is a product that just works. With minimal configuration, it is able to ingest huge amounts of data, learn and build models from that data, and begin providing valuable, actionable suggestions. The value of these suggestions can be extreme. A 5% optimization of throughput, power, or even DRA can be worth millions every year. A simple way to understand the potential is to look at the difference between your junior and senior operators' performance.
Well, there we go. That was the best I could fit into 5 minutes. If you want more information, of course, we can give you a slightly slower presentation request. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask later.
Thank you, Robert. That was a very effective way to present for sure, at least to give like an overview. So again, if anyone has questions, please add your questions to the Q&A. We have 2 more companies presenting. After that, we'll open for questions. So don't be shy. Add any questions you might have in the Q&A box, and Marcelino will moderate the discussion after. So next, I would like to invite then Larry Young, founder and CEO at Total Containment, for his presentation. Larry?
Hey folks, thanks very much, and great presentations, everyone. I'm just going to pop up my screen here. Let me know when our presentation is visible, and we'll get this started. We're going to take a different route today and go right to. Here we go. Perfect. So we're going to take a different. We've seen a lot of software based systems that are aimed at pipeline integrity, protection, monitoring, all that stuff, and that's all stuff that the industry needs desperately. We need to know when these things happen, but the Envirolock system takes a different route. This system integrates all those monitoring aspects, but takes and adds another level of protection with a physical barrier that's installed around the pipe to protect the pipe from, outside interference, corrosion, strikes from equipment, illegal tapping, illegal access, and just a multitude of applications. We create an environment around the pipe that is completely controlled and with the monitoring devices installed in that annulus and in that space between, as you'll see as we go through this. I'm going to show you a demonstration, an animated installation of one of our systems. We have two, and the second one I'll do briefly after the video. So what the problems are, as we're all aware, environmental impact from pipelines, shareholder ESG concerns, premature corrosion, equipment strikes, ineffective leak detection, illegal tapping on pipelines, lost product equals lost revenue. And those are all things that we can mitigate and have some impact on with the Envirolock system. That's a little bit longer than a transition than I expected. So I'm going to just kick the video in here and I'll speak through it. I'll try and keep the volume down as much as I can on the funky music that we got going on in the background. But here we go. It's way louder than it needs to be. So
we're actually not hearing anything, Larry. So it's totally on mute, the video.
The video's on mute. Okay, so I'll talk through it then. That's perfectly, and you'll see the instructions on the screen in any case, but I'll talk through it. So what's happening here is the trench is dug and our containment liner goes in the trench. And this is on a new system, a new pipeline. Cathodic protection is inside. Leak detection gets put into the bedding. It's all compacted and the leak detection goes in on top of the bedding itself. Then the pipeline is installed, put on top, all QC is done above ground. And then the system is completely covered with backfill and the sides are closed up on the liner. Now what this does is it creates an environment around the pipeline that is completely free from outside interference. No water gets inside, no strikes from there. They're going to come in contact with the liner long before they come into contact with the pipeline itself. And the system's able to repel many of these attacks, especially illegal tapping, which I'll show at the end. But inside this environment, when a leak takes place, it has nowhere to go. So it's going to fill up that defined area inside the containment system. And a leak doesn't have the pressure and the power to get through that containment system. We tested the system to show that it could resist 2,000 PSI at a 4 millimeter diameter orifice. Leak detection is very effective in this environment. As a leak takes place, it spills out into the containment system and we can detect that through vibration or through vapor detection. Our leak detection system that we've chosen is the Syscore system, also another Canadian company, and it has a multitude of ways to detect leaks and activity around pipeline. So alarms go off, very simple, shut off flow. The leak is contained inside the containment system, nothing gets out. Your guys go to the site, open up the area, open up the containment system, remove the contaminated soil and oil or gas, whichever, we'll get into the gas thing a little bit later. Remove the oil, repair the pipe, and then it's just a reverse of the installation of the removal of the contaminated soil that's inside the containment system. And I'll let this catch up here as I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I always get excited when I discuss this. Repairs are made, leak detection, cathodic protection goes back in, backfill is replaced, and then the system is folded over itself again and resealed. This is a sprayed product. It's made out of polyurea, which is a very, very strong material, very high tensile strength, and it's going to last for 75 to 100 years maintenance free in that environment, unless there's a strike from equipment. And here's a big one here. It's a little comical, but just to give you the idea, we can detect when they're digging above the pipeline. And this system will keep them out for a period of time. So once that alarm goes off, we're able to send out, we can use drones, we can use people going out to the site. But the key to this is we're aware of the attack before they even get to the pipeline. So the system is a physical barrier that's going to help keep these people away from your pipelines. And should a leak happen, the vast majority of that leak, or that if they get access to the pipeline, the vast majority of that spilled or leaked product is going to remain inside the containment system. And that's one of the exciting things about this. It's completely resealable. It's not an easy thing to penetrate. Believe me, polyurea is very similar to what's sprayed in the back of a truck bed. And it has just insane properties. Hydrocarbons as a chemical, they're not going to break down this material. Water has zero impact on this, on polyurea, and it's just a spray onto a geotextile fabric. And the geotextile fabric kind of similarly acts like a rebar in concrete, but it's just a substrate, just something to put the polyurea to. And polyurea has been in the industry for secondary containment for many, many years, and the properties of polyurea are well known. And okay, hit that one again. So, well, this is the Envirolock 2 system. It's an upgrade from Envirolock 1, and this one is for existing pipeline. As you can imagine, creating and installing the Envirolock 1 on an existing pipeline has some challenges, but it's certainly doable on an integrity dig kind of an application if a pipeline is, and this stuff, sorry, just to get back, this is for high consequence areas. This is for near water, under rivers, crossings, things like that. Certainly it can be installed on an entire pipeline, no problem, but it's made for those high consequence areas where if a leak happened, it's much more of an impact. And this system is going to last for a very long time in the ground. This system, particularly Envirolock 2, it's very impressive. It looks like it's a massive system on this pipe, but the Envirolock 2 system is installed on a pipe and it's only 2 to 4 inches in diameter, and 2 to 4 inches larger in diameter than the pipe itself. And you can see inside there that it houses leak detection. That orange material is very similar to a rock guard kind of material that they wrap around pipes to protect it from backfill. Well, in this instance, this material, it isn't a typical rock guard material. We make this from a recycled single-use plastic LLDPE and extrude it in this form. So just to give you a much better idea of what this material is made out of, we take recycled pond liners and make this material. It's porous. So as the leak happens, as the leak takes place, you can imagine leak detection being 2 inches away from the pipe. That's going to get detected instantaneously. It has nowhere to go and it cannot penetrate unless it's a catastrophic failure, which little is going to do for the leak. Even at 1500 PSI with a 4 to 5 millimeter diameter, that's a worst case scenario. It can't penetrate this material and our liner. So it's forced to move through that annulus inside the containment system. That system can be any size. We created a minimum size for that because it acts as a storage space. Now on a gas pipeline, the same application, except when it's detected, the flow is shut off, and before excavation even takes place, we can flare off the gases that are contained inside the containment system. So when excavation happens, it's very safe and there's no impact, no risk of explosion. And this is just another side view of the system. It's good for existing or new pipelines. It's an elastomeric properties based system. Expected life of it is 75 plus years. That's entire life of a pipeline. The improvements to leak detection alone. Now imagine a leak detection system held to the pipe. It can't go where it's not going to move from the earth. It's not going to move away from the pipe. It's going to stay in that spot. It's held there by the containment liner. It can act as the replacement to the coating as well. So the sections of pipe on a new install, we can take and install this system in our shop and then send it out to site to be installed fully. And then we're just doing the joints on site. And it will help with a lot of the false alarm problems that new technology tends to have because of the influence around the environment. The leak site is identified within 10 feet. Each sensor, and we have an array of sensors in this leak detection cable that can detect vibration, vapor, H2O. So if the system is struck by an excavator and water starts to get inside, well, we will detect that water as well to let you know that there's something going on with your pipeline. And we can also detect, obviously, methane and natural gas leaks. So it's a very effective system for new or existing. And one of the biggest problems in South America and Brazil, those kinds of areas, is the illegal tapping aspect. And we're in contact with our companies in Nigeria as well, as they have another problem. They have a massive problem there with that kind of an issue. And our system is able to keep people away from the pipe long enough to get authorities to site to put an end to the attack. Again, it's made for high consequence areas and it acts as a preventative measure for transient events, and it's for oversurge protection, that kind of thing. It's going to be able to withstand high amounts of pressure. It's sprayed right to the pipe. We can reinforce that connection and that adhesion with clamps as well. So it's, there's a lot more about this that we have to explain. I'm sure you've got a lot of questions, but I'm happy to discuss this further. And this is the leak detection system and what its capabilities are. Inside the leak detection cable that runs inside our containment system, there's 3 arrays every 10 meters. So the system is able to detect 3 different things at once. And it's operated by lithium battery or solar. We just bury the access and bury the battery above the pipeline. We can hide it. Solar tends to be knocked down in places where illegal tapping. So there's a couple of solutions from that regard. But we're able to detect inclination, temperature changes, vibrations, fluid levels, which is water inside the containment system, and hydrocarbons. So it's really a full system, and it's in-house monitoring, comes with its own monitoring software, very effective stuff. And these are just some of the partners that we have and we've worked with in the past. CIFR Technologies, I can't promote them enough. We spent 2 years at CIFR with our development of our system, and really that was, they were the gatekeeper for getting an idea like this through, and they're really, you couldn't do any better reaching out to CIFR when it comes to integrity issues. And this is our team, myself, my partner Eric, Jim Walsh, who's our COO. He's got 30 plus years in the oil and gas industry, worked for a major company here for a very long time, and is also very well, understands the system very, very well. So that's pretty much our presentation. I apologize if I went over our time frame, but any questions at all, please reach out, and I'd be happy to have another presentation or have a discussion.
Thank you, Larry. Yeah, no, it's hard to, like, those 5 minutes are really tricky.
Yeah, it's tough, but thanks very much. I appreciate it.
So complex that it takes time. So thank you very much for your presentation. And next, I would like, last but not least, we have our last company presenting now. I would like to invite Adam Marsden, SVP Sales and Client Solutions for Crux OCM. So Adam, stage is yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Caroline, and thank you as well to Nadine and all the operators that are taking their value time on a Friday afternoon before the weekend, of course, to listen to our different presentations. So let me just make sure that you guys can see my screen. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach than the other folks. I don't have a fancy video. We just have a PowerPoint here. But really quickly, just a bit of a thought process. For everybody on the line here, what's the most repetitive thing that you guys do each and every day? For me, that would definitely be email. If I could somehow magically take away 90% of my emailing that I had to do day in and day out, responding to people, etc., and still get the same amount of work done or more, that would be very, very wonderful for me personally. Unfortunately, we're not at the stage where we've made an email bot at Crux. What we've made is something that helps automate the control rooms, which is much more in alignment with what you guys are all on the line for. So your control room operators right now, as you guys know, you have control rooms that manage your heavy assets. So that might be your pipelines, your refineries. I saw that there's some folks on the line had different storage tanks, terminals, etc. And so in all of those control rooms, your control operators, they're sitting there, they're getting all of this information, setting all these set points, clicking all these buttons, entering all this information in numbers. And that's the majority of their job. So what Crux does and enables for the industrial assets and the control rooms of today and tomorrow is we are very akin to like the autopilot at the turn of the last century. So our main vision is to enable control room operators with very much like an autopilot functionality. It's not to completely take away control room operators. We still realize, just like the commercial planes of today, we want to make sure that there's somebody there for those upset conditions. But ultimately, we want to reduce their workloads so that at the end of their shift, they're not going home with a lot of stress, having started up an industrial asset or had some sort of condition they had to work through. So just a little bit of current operations versus Crux OCM enabled operations. So right now, your industrial assets in your control rooms, you have the folks, they're sitting there, they're pressing hundreds and thousands of buttons, hitting all those alarms, setting all those set points. With Crux OCM, we can distill that down to as simple as 1. So we set a target flow rate in the instance of pipelines, and we hit execute, and then the software goes through and automates everything else on behalf of the control operator. So right now, of course, your operators, they're juggling a lot of concurrent tasks. What this means is that, if they're having to manage multiple pipelines, there's lost revenue because you're no longer able to maintain max rates on all of your pipelines concurrently. With software, of course, you can. And then the last thing is that you do have operators that are working at 2 in the morning versus 2 in the afternoon, or you have a brand new operator that potentially is on your console. The benefit of having software is that we go through with our ML AI and as well working with your control operators to codify or basically put those best practices in place so that you get consistent operations each and every time. So segmentation wise, we're primarily going to focus on pipelines because that's what a lot of the people on the call are talking all about. But we have different technologies that range everywhere from upstream and downstream. But of course, the primary focus for you folks is the pipeline sector. A little bit more detail with regard to our automation optimization solutions. So we have a platform layer that has all of the tools nested within. So very akin to RCM or RBI technologies, so basically your preventive maintenance technologies. We have different assets, so that would be your pumps, it could be your columns, depending on the, if you're looking at a refinery or pipeline, etc. We also have optimization algorithms, standard APC, that sort of stuff. And all of those get nested together into our, what we call the automation solution layer. So what this is that's the one button press automation of startup of a pipeline, startup of an LNG facility, startup of your gathering systems, etc., or shutting them down, as well as maintaining them within steady state. On top of that, we have optimization add-ons or algorithms as well. So in the pipeline space, it's very important that we manage the pipeline with the lowest amount of cost possible. So we want to make sure that you're managing your power costs, your DRA costs, etc. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are putting through the appropriate amount of product within the appropriate time intervals based off of the power and DRA costs. And all of this, once again, is done automatically without any control operator intervention. So just to end up here, kind of the 4 main pillars to the rationale as to why Crux exists across the Americas. We have many different clients, and primarily the incubus of Crux was all around reduction in human factors. So it was really to take the control operators, all those mundane button clicks, set point changes, etc. that they're doing each and every day, and reduce that and distill that down as much as possible. So that was really the reason that we were founded and started. And then from there, we've been very fortunate because we found a lot of other derivative things that companies like as well. So you get consistent operations each and every time. We can start up your pipelines or whatever your industrial asset is much faster. We can perform swings much faster, which means that you have more throughput. We also, because we're software, we're sending commands more consistently and more frequently, which means that your pressure and your flow rate variations decline dramatically, which has a direct correlation to higher asset lifespan or asset integrity. And of course, the last thing is with regard to the environment. Depending on the specific bot that we're using or that's employed, we can reduce emissions and those environmental impacts as well. So that's at a really high level. Crux, I want to thank you guys all again. I hope you have a good weekend and hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you very much, Adam, for the presentation. So we're now done with the company's presentations. I would like to see, since I don't see many questions in the Q&A box and you guys are being too shy, I would like to invite back Marcelino Guedes to moderate this session and ask the companies a few questions. Since ESG is in everyone's topic right now, I just wanted to put a quick reminder there before we go that we just launched a very interesting BCCC ESG committee where we have tons of seminars and webinars and roundtables to discuss best practices and what's going on in Brazil and in Canada in that regard. So please follow us on LinkedIn and be updated and join us for those discussions. It'd be great to have you all there. So Marcelino, for the Q&A session is stage is back, is yours again.
Okay, Carol. before, I think that we have to encourage our colleagues from Brazil to ask questions to the Canadian companies. But I'd like to start some questions to our friends from Canada. Okay, the first one is to Seafair. Okay, just to explain what is going on in Brazil when we talk about the R&D activities. Okay, to Seafair. Okay, could be Alianati or Chance. Okay, please feel free to ask us about more information about my question. But the idea is, as you may be aware, there are several incentives from the Brazilian government for R&D projects in Brazil, okay, from a national petroleum agency, okay, and considering the oil and gas production in offshore sites. How can we identify the right projects, the right companies to work together with mainly pipeline companies in Brazil on a viable basis? How to do that? How? Because we are totally aware about the competence of Seafair. We have been trying to identify projects and activities to work together with the Brazilian pipeline community. But how we can try to work together using the incentives from ANP in Brazil, okay? As, for example, a partnership between Seafair and the City Dutch and Seafair and the other R&D centers in Brazil.
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent question. Unfortunately, I don't think I can answer it completely. But yeah, I guess from the analytics side of Seafair, which is where I'm from, we're seeing a lot more interest from Brazilian companies now that the pipelines are changing hands, and we're seeing a real drive in industry to move towards these more robust, systematic risk and integrity programs that can be driven by sort of more advanced modeling. And I think Seafair also, of course, has a lot of experience managing research and development projects as part of JIPs or joint industry programs, where we can pool the funding and the ideas from multiple participants into one project. So I unfortunately don't have any advice off the top for specific how to induce more in Brazil, but I'm sure we'd be very interested if we want to have a further discussion.
I just gave the access to Francisco as well. So Francisco, if you wanted to complement, to add to Chance's answer, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Marcelino, you touched in a very touchy point, let's say, and I have had conversations with Nadine about this. The regulation in Brazil, unfortunately for us, is that those incentives can be only used for activities, R&D activities that are conducted in Brazil. So unless the legislation changes, it is indeed an obstacle. We have pursued partnerships with other Brazilian universities, for example, and even that becomes a little bit complicated, right? It's not advantageous to them, I think, to work with us, because they can get access to those funds without having to have all the hurdles to deal with ANP and the legislation and so on. One avenue that I have discussed with Nadine in the past is similar to an avenue that Brazil has used with Norway. There could be, let's say, an agreement between Brazil and Canada that would put in place, that will then put the framework in place in which those corporations would happen. And that will mean, a two-way street in which Canadian companies could use the R&D infrastructure in Brazil, and Brazilian companies could use the R&D infrastructure in Canada, which will be then mutually beneficial to both parties. But again, this is something that needs to be worked, at a government level, and I'm sure that then this is something that it's more along Nadine and Carolina's court than mine. As you know, Seafair is a medium company, and we just don't have the power to make those things happen.
Okay, Lynette. I'd like to try to to encourage our colleagues to ask a question or to receive a question from our colleagues from Canada. Eric, please go ahead.
No, just thank you again for all this presentation. I have a specific question for the Brody, for the Ghsat. Just to have a better understanding of the system, do you have any experience if we can include the sensors for detection of methane in our routine survey with drone and many things like that, or it's the service is mainly with satellite and specific aerial survey?
So our services are specific to satellite and aircraft, but they are absolutely complementary to drones and ground-based work that needs to be conducted when emissions are detected. But I mean, as in terms of a routine surveying capability, the satellites are well suited to that type of application.
My question was more, if we have the sensors available, we can use this sensor in any.
Well, are you asking if the sensors are for sale?
Yeah, globally.
Okay, so the sensors are our own, and we don't currently sell those to anyone.
Okay, so yeah, it's a good summarize. Thank you.
Good question, though. It's often asked.
Awesome. I'd like to put something out there, Marcelino, if that's possible.
Sure. Sure. Open your camera.
Oh, right. Okay. Here we go.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's not allowing me to turn on my camera.
Really? I think that we have to talk with Carol.
Yeah,
hold on.
Okay.
Wait a second. Here. Sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, so I just wanted to put it out there. I mean, I've gotten a couple of questions regarding how much of the EnviroLock system has been put in the ground, and fantastic. Thank you very much. Development for these systems just completed last year, and we're in the pilot stage project right now. So if there's a project in Brazil, we would be absolutely tickled to speak about that project, and we might be able to complete a pilot project between our industry and yours, between our two companies. That'd be fantastic. But we're in the pilot stage. We've completed demonstrations, things like that, but we need to get this on some pipe in the ground and get some pilots done. So we're wide open for that kind of thing to come down to Brazil and install the system on a desired section of pipeline.
So I guess Marcelino is with you now. No more questions.
Yes. Okay. Okay. In this case, I will ask a question to our colleague Moniz. I think just to encourage Moniz. Brazil has a vast expanse of no flat areas with pipelines passing through. As we be aware, we have some right-of-ways passing through poor communities and in high consequent areas. How we could establish, or would it be possible to establish either a partnership or a subsidiary of your company here to share your knowledge, your technology with Brazilians or a local company to offer this service in Brazil? How we can work in this direction, okay?
Yeah, I think it's actually quite important to deliver, especially the geohazard management, in partnership with locals. Just by its nature, while the processes we are introducing, could be considered relatively flexible, universal, etc., we can put the framework at a large level, but to populate it with data. And as I mentioned, it's a discipline that, I'm not saying it's the only discipline like that, but it's a discipline that is highly dependent on calibrated local and regional knowledge. So I think it's important to actually, it's critically important to work with local, regional specialists. You say Brazil has got a lot of flat stuff. Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, that's why we need to talk to the right people, because the right people know the slopes, know the effect of climate change, which is getting to be kind of a topic that is felt, I'd say, starting to be felt in this geohazard management space. How do you deal with the impact of climate change through to the geohazards, because it aggravates slope stability, it aggravates potential scour, etc. So yeah, I would suggest the path forward by necessity needs like a local geo person. You know, it's yeah, we could come in here, but it just similarly what we do, frankly, in Colombia and Peru and so on. Yeah, you know, it's you need local, regional calibration.
Okay, thank you so much, Moniz. Bartelotti, I'd like to encourage you to open your camera and to ask your question directly to Larry. Oh, yes, please, go ahead.
Oh, good afternoon. My question is about the containment, the total containment regarding the cathodic protection performance. I wonder about first the system. What's the system? I think I saw a continuous anode parallel to the pipe. So I wonder if it's a galvanic system or an impressed current system. And what about the pipe to soil measurement interference that could be present because of the containment? Is it an conductor material or not?
Well,
that's my question.
Yeah,
great question.
Larry, it's a very interesting question.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks
One
so
thing-
much, Marcos.
Yeah, it's a
You're
great
welcome.
question. And obviously cathodic protection is necessary, and especially in Canada, because, you know, our regulatory processes are quite high. They're probably the highest regulatory processes and policies in the world. We have some very unique policies here, but it's all based on doing things the right way. So cathodic protection is directly incorporated, but it's very low requirement as the pipeline, the containment system itself protects the pipe from water. So there's, depending on what kind of fill, and the native backfill can go right back into the system that's excavated. Certainly that can happen, and there will be some moisture in that aspect in the soil itself. But the system is there; it's the physical barrier. So to answer your question, it is an impressed system. It is continuous, but it's dialed way down because there is no moisture or little moisture in the soil that will eventually dry out. So the point to cathodic protection, in my opinion, and my engineers think differently, it's a bit of a redundancy because there is no moisture, and the leak detection system inside our containment system will detect the introduction of water into the containment system itself. So we'll be able to tell, if someone's hit the containment system and opened up a hole in it for that groundwater gets into, we'll be able to detect that water in there. So there shouldn't be any moisture inside the containment system. And cathodic protection was included in this simply because it's a regulatory thing, and it has to, there are serious benefits to cathodic protection. It needs to be incorporated in case there is a failure, and in case the system is struck. But this system is made for high consequence areas, and that's the big thing about this. I mean, certainly it can be installed on an entire pipeline, but our system was designed by CorPro here in Alberta, in Edmonton. They're very good, top of the food chain when it comes to designing and implementing cathodic protection. The moisture content in the soil isn't going to require a massive, and it can be read from outside, it can be measured from outside the containment system. The system does block cathodic current, so that's why cathodic can't be outside the containment system. It has to be inside. But by doing so, it's going to last much longer. I mean, it's not being deteriorated at all.
Okay, Larry, thanks so much.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Udama, go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to thank to all of the presenters. We had very useful presentations. I will be in contact with Marcelino and Nadine to schedule meetings with all of you, okay? In order to have more details about each one of these presentations. It was very rich for us, and I'm sure that we can we can use some of the technology presented this afternoon. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Damar. I'd like to ask a question to Brody regarding some problem that we have in Brazil. I think that's just to explain to you that what is going on in Brazil. I think that recently we have a new big challenge in our industry. As you probably know, in Brazil, there is a new challenge, okay? It's a new problem, illegal tapping. I mean, criminals, okay, removing products from our pipelines. By using your satellite technology, your sensors, is it possible to detect oil or gasoline or naphtha spills or liquid using your technology? Okay, I don't know satellite, but using your sensors or with drones or balloons, how we can detect, okay, small leaks, small spills, okay, in liquid pipelines. Is it possible?
So the technology that we have today is focused on measuring gases. So in their truest form, I suppose, I should say. We are adopting our technology to detect other gases going forward, like carbon dioxide. Liquid leaks are not something that we can detect today, but there are absolutely very viable technologies out there, I think, that are at least in development to do that kind of thing. In terms of what we can do at Ghgsat to help with issues of tapping, of course, as long as an emission is of a sufficient size, we're able to observe and identify that. We have a couple of projects already, some where we're tasking our satellites, for instance, based on encroachments or other right-of-way of potential violations as a way to check for emissions. So it's very complementary to a lot of those other techniques, but on its own, there are probably better suited technologies to find those types of things. But again, it fits well with many of the others.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, Carol, I think that's in this case, I think that we are ready to start our...
Or closing, if there are no...
Yes, I think so. Nadine, please.
I think we should finish. Yeah, sorry, Carol.
No, sorry. I just wanted to reinforce here that if any of you want to connect, either from the Brazilian side or the Canadian side, if you guys want to learn more about who attended this event today and make those connections, please feel free to connect with Nadine or myself, and we'll be happy to make the introduction so you guys can organize one-on-one meetings with the companies as well, and then have the opportunity to ask more questions. So without further ado, I'd like to then invite Marcelino and Nadine to do their final remarks before we close the event. So Marcelino, Nadine.
I don't know. I think that's Eric would like to ask a question. I think that we'll have more 2 or 3 minutes. Go ahead, Eric.
No, it's not.
No, please feel free. Go ahead.
No, it's not a question, but I have a lot of questions to learn more on machine learning, on Geohazard and so on. But I think I would like to have more details, but I think, so I would appreciate after this meeting to have connection on with part of these presentation and to have more detail.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to ask to share a question because, for example, for the machine learning, I would like to understand which experience they have with the gas dispatching and how with the connection with the SCADA, if they can share more detail and experience to continue to open our mind on these machine learning revolution. So it's only what I wanted to share. And to thank you again, that's all.
So, hi, Eric, and everybody else that has remained here. I think what we should do is I'm going to send everybody a follow-up email, and we can organize individual meetings with the Canadian presenters, with your companies or your teams. Should you need more information? Because I think, of course, only 5 minutes is not enough for you to know exactly what the company does. The whole purpose here was to draw your company's attention to the technologies that have been presented. So what I would suggest is that we organize we can make the connections. We can, organize meetings for your teams again to get to know more about these technologies. Just let us know which companies you would like to know more about. I think we can do that via email because, it's been over time already, but I just wanted to say that we are here to do exactly that. That's the whole purpose of the webinar. So thank you for having stayed. From my part, it's a pleasure to have been able to co-organize this along with Pipeline Brazil and the BCCC. And again, we're going to follow up via email probably. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, Nadine, I think just to provoke Eric about the next edition of this meeting, okay? Canada-Brazil Pipeline Seminar. I think that we can select one subject, okay? I think that we can prepare a thematic seminar. For example, the machine learning in the pipeline industry, the data science, the pipeline of the future. I think that we can identify companies from Canada with this background, with this experience, and to organize the next event, as I mentioned before, Brazil, Canada, Pipeline Seminar. Thank you so much for joining us today. Okay, thank you, Carol. Thank you, Nadine. And thank you so much for the Canadian companies and the people from Brazil. Okay, Carol, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I really appreciate you taking your time, staying over time as well. We hope that you find this information very useful, and we hope to see some business materializing from this discussion. We will remain at your disposal for anything that you need. For the Canadian companies here, if you guys need any help or have any questions about Brazil itself, we have a big seminar coming up in October, Doing Business in Brazil discussion, that will go through the economic and political outlook, but also practical steps on how to find a partner or how to do business in Brazil. So I'll send you the information for that event as well. And I would like to take this opportunity as well to thank our annual sponsors for their support. So Vale, Export Development Canada, Sescom Barrier, Brookfield, Lundin Mining, and the TMX Group for the partnership to make these events possible. Of course, Pipeline Brazil, Global Affairs Canada, Marcelino and Nadine, thank you very much for the partnership and for trusting us to join you guys in organizing this event. And I would like to wish you all a great weekend. Stay safe, and I see you all very, very soon. So thank you for joining, and we'll keep in touch.